Hey everyone, welcome back to all my listeners. This is episode 2 in season 17. Today is Wednesday, February 11th, 2026. My name is Sonal Patel, and this is the Paint the Medical Picture podcast series. All right, you guys. Well, welcome back to me. This is my second episode of the new year for the podcast. Remember, I was gone, took a little hiatus, took a little me time, a little family time for myself the entire month of January. So I'm back. Things are warming up here in the Midwest, although I hope it doesn't last for too long because I like winter in the winter. I think I was saying this to my friends and family. I really miss just having winter snow and cold weather in the winter months. I don't like what global warming has done over the years, where we are bamboozled with snow and frost and ice and slushies on the roads and on our grasses and driveways everywhere in the months of March and even April. And that is just no fun because I like spring. And that's when I like to whip out the spring gear, start wearing those sandals, flip-flops, shorts, sleeveless blouses, all that fun apparel that has been hiding in closets, right, for the gloomy, doomy winter months. But anyways, hopefully it doesn't stay too warm for too long. Like I said, I missed all of the snow in the month of January, but I'm still very, very happy with my golden tan that I obtained when I was in India. So I'm still happy. I'm still glowing from that trip of just decompressing. I think it was very, very needed because now back at work, full swing, the stress has already started, people. The stress has already started because where do I work? I work in healthcare, right? So there's always a lot of topsy-turvy things that happen in healthcare. But anyways, for today's episode, it is the second Wednesday of the month, and you know I'm still going to be focusing on the OIG Work Plan updates. But I did notice while I was gone for the entire month, while I was perusing around the OIG website, there have been some significant changes that have been made, and I think that's a good thing. I think they are looking at 2026 to freshen up and brighten up their website. And so the OIG Work Plan is no longer found where it used to be under the heading of what's new. Now it's been tucked up under the tab for reports, and the chart view is eliminated for each and every month as far as I can see. And that's okay because the work is still being performed and they are announcing that on their work plan. So I'm here to let you know what they've been doing in January 2026. And in my trusty tip, I'm going to go ahead and focus on a brand new industry-specific compliance document that was just released for Medicare Advantage. And of course, I'm going to go ahead and close out and round out today's episode with another remarkable quote on beauty, abundance, and innovation by Elisabeth Kübler Ross. All right, you guys, let's get into it. So in today's Newsworthy, the month of January's OIG Work Plan updates. Now, there are 6 updates that were made to the OIG Work Plan for the month of January 2026. Now, the first OIG Work Plan for January 2026 is titled IHS's Administration of the Catastrophic Health Emergency Fund. Now, this report is expected from the Office of Audit Services. The Indian Health Services, or IHS's Catastrophic Health Emergency Fund, for short, CHEF, was established to meet the extraordinary medical costs associated with the treatment of victims of disasters or catastrophic illness for individuals under IHS's responsibility. CHEF is used to reimburse tribal health programs for medical services purchased from non-IHS providers when existing IHS or tribal facilities cannot provide the care needed, or when supplemental funds are needed for comprehensive care. CHEF appropriations are capped annually and must be used as the payer of last resort. The OIG's objectives are to, number 1, provide an overview of how IHS administers CHEF. Number 2, identify any significant changes to the CHEF program during fiscal years 2021 through 2025. And finally, third, to describe the process for reimbursing medical costs of eligible individuals. Now, this final report is expected in fiscal year 2028. Now, the second OIG Work Plan update made for the month of January 2026 is titled NIH Autism Spectrum Disorder Other Transaction Award Process. Now, this report is expected from the Office of Audit Services. The National Institutes of Health, the NIH, Autism Data Science Initiative, or the ADSI, is a research effort that will harness large-scale data resources to explore contributors to the causes and rising prevalence of autism spectrum disorder. Now, in fiscal year 2025, the NIH issued 13 other transaction, or OT, awards totaling approximately $50 million over a 24 to 36-month period to support the ADSI. The OIG's objective will be to determine whether the NIH issued ADSI OT awards in accordance with applicable federal requirements. Now, this final report is expected in fiscal year 2028. Now, the third OIG Work Plan update made for the month of January 2026 is titled Reducing Pharmacy Fraud in Medicare Part D. Now, this report is expected from the Office of Evaluation and Inspections. The OIG has long-standing concerns about fraud committed by bad actor pharmacies. This fraud puts the Part D program and millions of taxpayer dollars at risk every year. Key tools that CMS uses to safeguard other parts of Medicare from fraud, such as revocation, preclusion, and payment suspension, may not be effective at deterring fraud by pharmacies that bill Part D plan sponsors. This review will determine the extent to which pharmacies that have been identified as bad actors by CMS or Part D plan sponsors continue to bill and receive payment for drugs under Part D. This review will seek to describe and identify opportunities for CMS and Part D plan sponsors to improve their ability to detect and reduce potential fraud by pharmacies in the Part D program. This final report is expected in fiscal year 2028. Now, the fourth OIG Work Plan update made for the month of January 2026 is titled Audit of Medicaid Unenrolled Providers. Now, this report is expected from the Office of Audit Services. To strengthen Medicaid provider enrollment, the 21st Century Cures Act requires that all providers that serve Medicaid beneficiaries enroll with their state Medicaid agency effective January 1st, 2017 for Medicaid fee-for-service and January 1st, 2018 for Medicaid Managed Care Organizations, or MCOs. In addition, the Cures Act required that no federal financial participation be paid for managed care expenditures when states have not complied with the requirement to enroll MCO network providers. States must also return to CMS the federal share of overpayments associated with unenrolled fee-for-service providers. The OIG will determine whether the state agencies complied with these federal requirements and prohibited payments associated with providers that were not enrolled in their Medicaid fee-for-service and managed care programs. Now, this final report is expected in fiscal year 2028. Now, the fifth OIG Work Plan update made for the month of January 2026 is titled Trends, Patterns, and Key Comparisons Related to CMS HCC Risk Adjustment 2020 Model, or V24, and 2024 Model for V28. Now, this report is expected from the Office of Audit Services. Payments to Medicare Advantage, or MA organizations, are risk adjusted based on the health status of each enrollee, again, pursuant to the Social Security Act in sections 1853A. MA organizations are required to submit risk adjustment data to CMS so CMS can determine each enrollee's health status, again, pursuant to section 42 CFR 422.310B. Specifically, CMS maps certain diagnosis codes to hierarchical condition categories, or HCCs, which CMS then uses to increase its payments to the MA organizations. In 2024, CMS began paying MA organizations according to a new model known as version 28 or V28. The new model significantly decreased the number of diagnosis codes that map to an HCC and increased the number of HCCs that CMS uses to increase payments. CMS anticipated that the transition to the V28 model would save over $7.6 billion in payments for 2024 alone. The OIG will analyze the diagnosis codes that MA organizations submitted to CMS for 2024 to determine whether CMS was able to achieve its intended savings. Now, this final report is expected in fiscal year 2028. Now, the sixth and final OIG Work Plan update made for the month of January 2026 is titled Audit of Contracts Terminated in Fiscal Year 2025 at HHS. Now, this report is coming from the Office of Audit Services. As one of the largest contracting agencies in the federal government, HHS, or the Health and Human Services, is obligated more than $36.8 billion for over 36,000 contracts in fiscal year 2024. Since January 2025, HHS has terminated full or partial, descoped, or not renewed more than 5,700 contracts. Part 49 of the Federal Acquisition Regulation establishes policies and procedures relating to the full or partial termination of contracts for the government's convenience. To terminate a contract, the federal government is required to send a written termination notice to the contractor and make a determination to release or deobligate excess funds. The OIG will determine whether HHS terminated contracts in accordance with federal requirements and applicable contract specifications. This final report is expected in fiscal year 2028. And now it's time for my best practice tips in Trusty Tip. All right, so this is very exciting. I've been waiting for a new compliance document from the OIG for about a year, so I'm very happy. There's a brand new compliance document that's been released from the OIG, and it is on their website, and it is specific for Medicare Advantage industry segment specific compliance program guidance. So I think it's a fantastic new resource for all of us to use in this space, to use for compliance for this specific segment of healthcare. Now, it is a 42-page PDF document that outlines many, many areas, but I only wanted to highlight one area and read some passages from the PDF document to set the stage for my audience. It reads, quote, "We encourage MA parties to use the Medicare Advantage ICPG." Again, that means the Industry Segment Specific Compliance Program Guidance. That's a mouthful. So, of course, they shorten it to the acronym ICPG. So, quote, "We encourage MA parties to use the Medicare Advantage ICPG as a tool in identifying their own risk areas and in implementing, evaluating, and updating their compliance programs to mitigate these risk areas. As each MA party reflects on how to best use this tool, OIG notes the following. 1. Many MA parties and their employees are dedicated to providing high quality and cost-effective services to their MA enrollees. Industry representatives repeatedly highlighted this dedication during listening sessions with the OIG. Number 2, adhering to legal obligations and avoiding pitfalls can present challenges in the complex and evolving MA program. This ICPG is intended to synthesize and coalesce OIG's knowledge base to offer recommendations that may help to alleviate or overcome some of those challenges. Number 3, the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, or CMS, regulations require Medicare Advantage organizations, MAOs, which are public or private companies that offer MA plans, to adopt and implement effective compliance programs, including measures to prevent, detect, and correct fraud, waste, and abuse. CMS sets forth additional guidelines regarding its compliance requirements and recommendations in its Medicare Managed Care Manual. Many of these requirements in the CMS regulations overlap with the voluntary 7 elements of an effective compliance program as described in Section 3 of the GCPG. Again, that document was released in November of 2023, and it's fantastic. The OIG underscores that these program requirements may change. They recommend MA parties consult the applicable laws and regulations directly as the primary source for those legal obligations. So again, it's always recommended. I always advise that you reach out to a trusted healthcare attorney when anything is of legal obligation or legal types of matters for your organization. All right. Finally, let me just continue on. Quote, the OIG emphasizes that the Medicare Advantage ICPG and the GCPG, which provide voluntary, non-binding guidance, are intended to complement CMS's compliance program regulations, which are mandatory for MAOs. So that's a caveat, right? Let me read that again. So the Medicare Advantage ICPG as well as the GCPG are voluntary, non-binding guidance, but they're intended to complement CMS's compliance program regulations, which are mandatory for our Medicare Advantage organizations. Let me continue. CMS's regulations provide the minimum requirements for MAO compliance program structure and operation. The recommendations and practical considerations in the Medicare Advantage ICPG and GCPG, if incorporated by MA parties, could help facilitate compliance with CMS's compliance program regulations and other statutory and regulatory obligations. Moreover, the Medicare Advantage ICPG has a broader scope than the CMS compliance program regulations, which impose mandatory legal obligations only on MAOs. That is, the Medicare Advantage ICPG applies to a wider range of MA parties and offers additional voluntary measures beyond the compulsory CMS compliance program regulations that may further focus and enhance compliance, end quote. And finally, I focus a brand new season 17 Spark on beauty, abundance, and innovation. So again, the new season is focused on my recent inspirations from my amazing trip to India. Now, I want this 17th season Spark to be filled with our world's thought leaders, writers, artists, philosophers, everyone who inspires us with their insights on beauty, on abundance, and on innovation. So, in this week's inspiring quote in Spark is from Elisabeth Kübler Ross. People are like stained glass windows. They sparkle and shine when the sun is out. But when the darkness sets in, their true beauty is revealed only if there's a light from within. Absolutely true, right? I love this quote on beauty. It really showcases that as humans, we really do radiate light when we are happy and hopeful, bright and joyous. Even in our moments of gloom and doom, of self-despair, we can continue to glow and emanate our radiant light. It is not dimmed by a few moments of uncertainty, of regret or doubt. We continue glowing from within. I'm happy Elisabeth Kübler Ross's spark still burns brightly and can still inspire so very many. All right, you guys, that wraps up today's episode. All right, you guys, well, just a few short days away from Valentine's Day over the weekend. I hope you guys have your plans all set up. You've ordered your flowers, you've bought your chocolates, your diamonds, rubies, emeralds, whatever you can afford for your loved one this year. So hope you guys have a very, very nice holiday. Maybe it's even a long weekend for those of you who are taking off or can take off from work for President's Day. I know I'll still be working. No more time off for me. I took some much needed time in January. So I am working away every day this month and next month and the month after that. So anyways, you guys, I really, really wish you an incredible weekend ahead. And I will see you all next Wednesday. Thanks so much for listening on today's episode. And I hope every week with me brings you closer to helping your providers paint a masterpiece. See you next Wednesday.